Do you like to play golf? Is that one of your hobbies? Today, I'm talking all about golf courses as a business based on a question from a viewer like you.
I'm David C. Barnett, and you're tuned in to Small Business and Deal Making, the podcast, YouTube channel, and blog where I talk about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium sized businesses while controlling risk. So, if you're looking to take control of your future through buying a business one day, or if you already own a business and you're looking to grow or exit, you've come to the right place. I talk about interesting things, I talk to interesting people, and I answer your questions every week right here. So, be sure to hit like and be sure to hit subscribe, and let's get to it. Are you a small business owner that's thinking about exiting your business now or in the next few years? My team and I are here to help with our unique zero commission program that we've been using since 2016. We can show you what your business is worth, prepare the package you'll need before you meet your first buyer, even run a confidential online advertising program for you just like business brokers do. And we'll coach you through the whole process, or you can hire us to manage it all for you, including coordinating your whole sell-side deal team. Head over to howtosellmyownbusiness.com to learn about how my team and I can help you get ready by watching a series of videos we prepared that explain each step in detail. And if you're ready or just curious to learn more, reach out to us and we'll get you started or schedule a call to answer your questions. I look forward to meeting you and learning more about your business.
All right. So, I got an email from a viewer from Nick, and I'm going to put it up on the screen here and then I'll read it to you. Nick says, I own a golf course. To my knowledge, in the 120 plus videos I have watched so far, you have never said the words golf course. Well, I've already said it 4 times now here today. So, here we go. You talk about profit when selling. You don't talk about property as much as profit. I have a nice profit. I have a nice property. If I had no profit, the property would still be worth quite a bit. So, am I selling property? But I do have a profit. So, am I really selling profit? Seems like a disservice to the property. Am I somehow selling property plus the profit? We know there is no profit without the property, but I could have a property without the profit, right? I need to get my head screwed on. Can you explain in basic terms what does a golf course owner have when he has property and profit? And unlike the old hardware store downtown video, we'll put a link to that one here. I kind of need them both. As I go forward digesting your stuff, I will have a better feel for what I have. That way, I can better lock in on the concepts that would apply to my situation. This is a fantastic question. Thank you very much, Nick, for sending it in. So, I have had the pleasure of dealing with 3 different golf courses over the course of my career in helping to examine, the business that they had, the profitability, et cetera, and try to figure out how they might be positioned to be sold. And, in preparing for today's video, I've done quite a bit of research about the industry, and, I've, yeah, called a friend or 2, and I've got some ideas in here that I wanna share with you to talk about this very interesting set of questions that Nick has put together. So, the first thing is, uh, we have to understand what the business model is of a golf course, and, we can all picture a golf course in our head, obviously. It's like a big piece of land, and there's fairways and, people are hitting the ball and like walking around and ideally it's a nice sunny day where everyone's enjoying themselves outside and at the end of the round of golf they stop and have lunch, maybe get a drink, and that's a golf course, right? So, um, we're basically talking about something that is at the intersection of real estate and hospitality because as Nick pointed out, without the land we can't have a golf course, and as we're going to explore here, it's really important that that hospitality function be executed properly in order to make these businesses work. Now, I did some research and I found out that in North America, the golf course and country club industry has revenues between 37 and 38 billion dollars annually. So clearly, there's a lot of money being spent on golf, right? And on having lunch after you play around a golf and all that kind of thing. Here's the typical breakdown of revenues for a golf course. The green fees and or memberships could be between 50 and 60% of their revenue. And then the food and beverage and events could be 25 to 35. And then things like lessons, rentals, pro shop, profits off selling things could be between 5 and 10%. And the profitability depends on one big factor that nobody controls, which of course is the weather. Um, you know, Margins are basically tight. Most golf courses, according to my research, that are run as a profitable going concern have a profit margin between 10 and 12%, right? So, and we're going to get into this question of run as a going concern in a minute here because it's really important. But let me talk a little bit about the importance of catering, bars, and events, right? So if you have a properly operating facility like banquet hall, bar, restaurant, etc. facility on the golf course, then you can move from being seasonally and weather related to more of a year round sort of event banquet hall kind of business, which can really help to smooth out the cash flow of the business. It can be very, very important. Um, the courses that develop event-ready spaces can lift profits by 15 to 25% and raise their valuations due to higher EBITDA multiples. We'll talk about that in a minute. Without the diversification, many golf courses would remain, typically what we would describe as asset rich but cash poor. So they've got all of this land, but they don't have a lot of money flowing through their hands, right? So let me tell you a quick story. So 20 plus years ago, when I was a younger guy and just sort of getting into the world of business, I heard a rumor that there was going to be a meeting about buying a golf course. And so I went to the meeting, and it was a golf course about a 30-minute drive from the downtown core here that happened to be up for sale. And it was up for sale because I don't think it was doing very well. So it had a poor performance, and it had been run like a regular business. And I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, that they had a mortgage on the property. And the people organizing the meeting were basically saying that the reason that the golf course didn't succeed was because of this mortgage payment, right? If they didn't have to make the mortgage payment, it would have been just fine. And so the idea being presented at this meeting was, let's gather a whole bunch of people together and we'll each kick in $25,000 and we'll buy this golf course and run it as a semi-private kind of club. So all the people who kick in 25 grand, they become a member or a shareholder of this club, and now we pay cash for the thing. It's going to be much more stable. I think at the end, they didn't get enough investors and they ended up having to get a mortgage as well. And I know personally one of the people that was on the organizing group that did this, who told me that by the second week of August, they realized that there was severe mismanagement in their kitchen and bar service. And the manager of the facility that they had hired had not been keeping a good enough eye or control over what was going on there, and the margins weren't correct and the earnings weren't going to be coming in from the restaurant and bar. And there's, by that time in August, there just wouldn't be enough time left in the season to fix things and get things back on track. And essentially, even though they did make moves to repair the operation of the bar and restaurant at that time, uh, they were never able to make any revenue from the bar and restaurant. And that one thing in their first year sank the whole deal. They ended up having to put it up for sale. Like it was just, that's how critical it was for this thing to be successful. And this brings me to the whole idea, the topic of the mortgage and how having to make payments creates financial stress on these things. The difference between public and private or semi-private courses. Okay. So a public course is one where anyone can walk up and pay a green fee and play golf. So my 15-year-old son likes to go golfing with his buddies, and whenever I drive him to the golf course, they're going to this place that's like 25 minutes out in the woods. It's like drive and drive and drive and drive, and you're way out there. Of course, where land is cheap, right? And so there's this golf course that's been open for decades, and it's way out where the land is cheap. And because it's a family-owned business, and the land didn't cost a lot, and I'm imagining a lot of the construction was probably done by people in the family learning how to drive a bulldozer or whatever. These guys have some of the lowest green fees, and so people like my son will go out there, right? Because he doesn't have a lot of money. Compare that, and so that place is trying to make a business out of attracting people one at a time, and they do sell seasonal memberships. Conversely, there's a club right here in the city, which is owned by its members. So it's run like a not-for-profit private club, like think of the Rotary Club or something like that. And so these guys own the land, they own their clubhouse. There's no financing charges, right? And they run this thing to their own pleasure and benefit, which means that if there's extra money, what are they going to do? They're going to renovate the bathroom or whatever, right? They will do fundraising events to buy a new tractor if they need a new tractor for their club. And so, the privately owned place that's trying to run itself as a money-making business is competing against the club, which has no real need for profit motive other than raising money to do capital expenditures, replace things, and cover its costs, right? And so the mixture of these ownerships in this industry creates an issue because if you're trying to be a profitable business, and that means you want to like raise your prices, you're competing against other people who do not actually have a profit motive. And to make things even worse, in some places you actually have government owned golf courses. So I have experienced before in my travels running into places where a city, for example, might own a golf course in a city park. And uh, their goal is simply to cover its operating costs, right? There are, here in Canada anyway, provincial governments that own golf courses. Uh, I live near a national park which has a golf course. So it's like the federal government owns a golf course. And so this skews the playing field because you've got competitors in the marketplace that don't have the same sort of motives or motivations. And while it is certainly possible to create a premium luxury product, like you think about, Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago golf club, right? Like, yeah, but you need to be in a place which has a market of people who can afford that kind of thing, who are going to be willing to pay for that kind of premium luxury kind of experience or product, which of course is a small number of places and a small group of people. Um, so let's talk about this a little bit more in depth because I live near Prince Edward Island, which back in the 1990s decided to market itself as a golf destination because golf was climbing in popularity and as a business all through the 80s and 90s. And the government there decided that they were going to invest in golf courses and make Prince Edward Island this big destination for golf. They bought the golf courses, and decades after buying them, they still lose money. And I found an article talking about how they were trying to sell them back around 2015, and then I did a further search to find out that they still own three of them, right? And they continue, as far as I can tell, to lose money. So they're putting public money in to subsidize the operation of these golf clubs, golf courses, and I can't imagine what it must be like to have a privately owned one trying to compete with the government one willing to lose taxpayer dollars, right? So really, really tough. Let's get into a little bit of the heart of Nick's question, which is about property versus profit. So what is he really selling if he wants to sell his golf course one day? So we've got the property, which has a whole bunch of issues around it, property in general. So you've got things like land, zoning, the location. Like, you could say acres of land sell for X number of dollars in a given area, but they're only going to be purchased by somebody who can then use it for whatever purpose they have in mind that is going to be profitable for them, right? And so golf courses could end up, for example, with some kind of zoning which prevents them from being used for more lucrative type of activities. And so the then there's the business, which of course is selling the memberships, doing the food and beverage, having the tournaments, all that kind of stuff, which produces cash flow ideally, but it may not. And what that ends up meaning is that you have this operation like Nick described, where he's got profit, but if we're going to value this golf course as a business, as a going concern, as you know from being a fan of this channel and watching my videos, we're going to look at what other golf courses have sold for, and we're going to end up finding a certain multiple of cash flow. And drum roll, please. Excuse me. In the world of golf courses, that multiple tends to be between 6 and 8 times EBITDA. So not SDE, EBITDA. Okay. So this is after everyone's paid, including a manager. And so if you do not have much of a profit, basically what you're selling reverts to just the land value. But even if you do have a profit, if 6 to 8 times EBITDA gives you a number which is worth less than the land, then guess what? You're back to land value. Or worse, some other form of liquidation value, or maybe it's a bonus. Let me give you another story. So I said that I've worked on 3 different golf course businesses that where I've done evaluation work. And there was one in particular where I showed the guy based, after I normalized everything. And listen, this guy was trying really hard to make money with his golf course, but he owned a contracting business at the same time. And what he ended up doing is a lot of the things a golf course needed, his contracting company would end up doing the work or end up, supplying fuel or end up lending the course tractors and equipment. And when we went through the normalization process, it became very clear that the golf course was not making money. It was being highly subsidized by his other business, and the profit he managed to generate was really driven by his burning desire to be able to claim that he was a successful golf course operator. When we were done, I basically looked at the revenue and I looked at his small profit, and then I compared his revenue with other golf course revenue and what those sold for as a percentage of revenue. And I said, look, I think your golf course would sell for, this amount of money based on the business activity going on here. And the new owner would have to come in and really make some improvements into how well it was being run. And my guess would be someone with like a catering restaurant bar management kind of background would be what would be required because his clubhouse wasn't being run very well either. And when he saw the number that I produced, um, he literally whipped out a calculator that he carried with him, and he did some numbers, and he said, "If I stripped off the topsoil and sold it 1 truckload at a time, I would end up with 3 times more money than what you're talking about." And that would be an example of a liquidation of a golf course, right? Like, he put all of that time and effort into building the golf course, uh, planted the grass, took care of the grass, build the sand traps, all that kind of stuff. Huge capital investment goes into building these things. And not only was he not able to generate enough of a cash flow to make that all that work worthwhile. So the cash flow value, 6 to 8 times EBITDA, did not come up to the value of the land and the effort that had been put into it. But it would have made more sense for him just to like literally strip the topsoil and I don't try to plant spruce trees later, maybe turn it back into a forest would have been the move to make. Um, but yeah, listen, it's tough. So this brings us up to another kind of area that is it's like semi conspiracy theory because it's true, but it's really tough to pull off. And that's the whole idea of golf courses as land banks. So the idea is that if you can see a city growing in a certain direction, you go in that direction out into the countryside, you buy the cheap land, turn it into a golf course so that you can let the city catch up to, your area, and then you can convert it into a neighborhood or some other purpose that will have a higher value, for example. And here's the problem with that is that while land banking is real, you know, often land banking works best when you buy the piece of land that's undeveloped and you just sit on it, right? Like you invest in the land, you buy it, you own it, and then you wait for the development to catch up and then you just sell it to a developer who wants to develop it. If you turn it into a golf course, well, then you now have to put in a ton more money. And if you're not able to make money with the golf course, it means then you have to like subsidize it if you want to be able to keep the piece of land. We've seen all kinds of examples where people will build a golf course to support the sales of real estate in a housing development, for example, in which case the golf course is being built kind of like an amenity, which adds value to the housing that's available, for example. Um, Near me, again, and sorry, like, I know that I'm using a lot of examples from close by. We'll talk about region and weather here in a minute. But, there was a big development that went in where someone built a fancy award-winning designer's golf course. Then they built all of these houses and condos all around it, and the developer carved off the golf course operation and made it its own business, so that once they had sold all of the housing and land around it, then they were free to walk away and let the golf course go bankrupt, which it did, right? And then a bank ended up owning it because, he had borrowed to build a golf course. And the bank, of course, is not really wanting to be in the business of running a golf course. And, eventually, the management came up with a plan to try to own and or, like, operate the golf course until the bank could find a buyer, because the bank was still trying to find a buyer. And, I guess they got the plan approved by the bank, and the bank was basically like, "It's in your hands, like, you put up the operating capital, you run this thing, you try to make a profit," and, basically, the management was trying to, like, preserve their jobs sort of thing. And it kinda limped along like that for a while, and I'm not even sure what the resolution ultimately was, or if the bank ever ended up selling it, or if the management team managed to buy it, but it was just an exact example of what's being described here. And so this kind of plan involves tons and tons of money. It involves, the willingness to build all of this stuff. You then have problems like restrictive covenants, and homeowners associations. So I can just imagine all the people that bought houses around the golf course. In the purchase contracts they have, there's probably some kind of association or whatever that relates them to the golf course. So if you later bought the golf course, you probably would not be allowed to just, like, tear it up and build more houses, right? There You would have all of these covenants and things that would be, clouding the title of the property. And so it's, I think people point to these things afterwards and say, "Oh, there was somebody who tried to pull a fast one and build a golf course in order to sell land, and this was their plan all along." I don't necessarily think people plan to fail. I think that the developer in that situation probably would have been much happier pointing back to it years later if it had been successful and said, "Hey, look what I did. Isn't it great?" And people are still playing golf kind of thing. So, like, and then there's like market timing risk, like all this kind of stuff has to just align properly for this kind of, sort of evil plan to work out. And I just don't buy it. I think that it's a tough kind of thing to sort of pull off. Let's talk about seasonality in North versus South. So I did some research on the New England into Atlantic Canada, where I live, area, because I just assumed that obviously we have winter here, and that means that it's tougher to be successful in golf in the north than it is maybe down in the Carolinas or Florida, right? But I was surprised at the information that I learned. So while it is indeed true that northern golf courses have to make all of their money in 6 to 7 months each year, down in the South, like in Florida or the Carolinas, they also have weather concerns that are much, much different. So the dryness, for example, creates huge costs for water and irrigation during the summer months. And in the fall, of course, these areas might get hit by a hurricane, which can cause incredible damage to some of the courses. So some of the articles that I was reading said, if it rains in the north, you don't get any golf revenue that day. But if a hurricane hits the golf course in South Carolina, the thing's closed for a week while they try to clean it up and get things functioning again, right? And so it's the same sorts of things, it just looks differently. And the operating costs are a lot higher, again, because of things like irrigation with the dryness that comes through the summer months. Um, so the the continuous operation that's available in the South year round doesn't necessarily equate to higher or more guaranteed profits. So here's some of the key takeaways for that I want you to take from this video. Um, a golf course is both land and business, but not all buyers are going to value both of these things equally. Um, Profitability depends on how well you use your property year round, not just the acreage. So, um, like I think that really this is a business where in order to be successful, you must be a creative operator who is going to be able to take full advantage of any kind of banquet or dining facilities that you might have. And I would even say, like, expanding into other kinds of businesses that are going to be take advantage of these facilities. And what do I mean by other kinds of businesses? Like, if you own your own banquet facility and you create your own sort of management organization or an annual conference that happens at your facility, right? On the weekend, nobody else wants to use for their wedding, for example, right? This is the kind of thing I'm talking about where it's like, how can we make sure we get maximum use of our assets all the time and create uh, revenues or profitability in excess of what we can just earn from basically renting out the facility to someone who wants to do a wedding reception or something like that. Um, Sustainable operators focus on community, hospitality, and consistent experiences, not just the fairways. So again, it's this holistic, all-in-one kind of thing. And if you own a golf course, you're not just managing the land, you're managing how that land earns. You really have to think about the land as a business. So it's an ecosystem of business, property, and community perception. Um, if you are in this business, what I would say is that you really need to manage your long-term decision making with respect to where you stand financially and where you expect to stand in the future. So I would recommend Nick, for example, to do something like what we offer our most probable selling price evaluation to learn what his golf course is worth as a going concern as a business, and also engage with someone like a local certified real estate appraiser to get their opinion on what the land is worth, both as a golf course where they may compare it to other golf courses that have sold in the region, but also like what's it worth just as raw land or undeveloped property, or what are the highest and best use cases around. Like, a certified commercial real estate appraiser is going to be able to answer these kinds of questions, like what would it be land worth if we just like agreed to build condo buildings here or something like that, right? Because especially if you're in an area where land values continues to go up because of other kinds of development, it may be impossible for the golf course business to ever create the kind of cash flow required to give it a higher value than simply redeveloping it. And if you knew that was the case, it doesn't necessarily mean you quit the golf business and sell the land, but it would certainly inform how you choose your retirement or exit plan, right? So if I knew that my golf course business, which, hey, maybe it's got no debts, maybe it's earning a great income for me, but I know that it could never sell as a business for more than the land is worth. Well, if I'm going to retire in 10 years' time, then obviously I'm not going to be buying new tractors. I'm not going to be spending the money to, renovate the banquet hall with a new dance floor. Like I'm going to start making decisions that's going to allow me to pull more and more cash out of this thing. Because if my plan to exit is just to sell the land to someone who's going to build something else there, then I want to maximize the proceeds of cash from that. If, on the other hand, you're one of those rare operators who's able to charge a high enough price to really generate an EBITDA cash flow that gives you a value in excess of what the land is worth, then you've got a different kind of plan laid out in front of you, right? Then it becomes really important to make sure that you maintain that experience to the highest degree so that people are willing to pay the top green fees or memberships to be a part of your club, et cetera, et cetera. So, what unfortunately I run into is that I'll meet people who are getting into their 60s and they want to exit, and then they find out the truth. Where if they had found out at 50 or 55, they would have made a lot better decisions between that time and their exit moment. Anyway, Nick, I hope that helps. Um, you know, I think that anyone who's going to get involved with this kind of business, a huge component of being involved has got to be an interest in and love for the game. And I think that's also part of the problem because people will be very passionate about the game and that will lead them into getting involved in this kind of business. I can totally see the advantages that private clubs that are operated as not-for-profits have in this space, because they're operating with ownership or membership who is entirely focused on just the pleasure of playing the game, and who are going to give direction to management basically to operate the club with respect to enhancing amenities and making the course as nice as it can be. And all of the money is going to go back into there. And because no EBITDA profitability has to come out of it to go into an owner's pocket, uh, I can see why players get attracted to those places. So I'll mention again, the public course where my son goes to play. Um, I've got friends now. I just turned 50. I have friends now who are retiring, or friends who are getting into sort of semi-retirement, where they're now in a position where they can go play golf 3 days a week if they want. And what I am noticing is that guys I know who always used to go to public golf courses and pay green fees because they were only golfing 10 or 11 times a year, as they get to that semi-retirement or retirement phase where they can start playing 3 times a week, they all stop going to the public courses and they all join a club, right? Because it just makes more economic sense, because now they're paying an annual fee to be a member of a club and they can go as much as they want. And that club's entire focus is on using the green fees to make things better. And that's what makes it tough, because as people graduate into the stage of their life where they should be a bigger consumer and spending more on the sport, they're bowing out of the sort of free market economy of golf, and they're getting into these private clubs where they are getting a better deal. And it's this competition, I think, that is created by either these not-for-profit exclusive membership clubs or government-owned clubs, golf courses, that creates that cap, where you get to a certain level with your green fees, and you hit this pricing resistance because you're competing with people that don't need to make any money. I mean, look at the example we said there about Prince Edward Island. They're running these amazing award-winning courses that are designed to attract tourists from away, and they're willing to lose money at it, right? Now, their goal is to, have people come in, spend money on hotels, restaurants, travel, all that other kind of stuff, right? They think that this is a good strategy for them. Um, but in a nutshell, you can go play golf on an award-winning course for less than it costs to run the course, right? It's tough to compete with that if you're a private businessman. Anyway, thanks very much, everybody, for tuning in today, and I hope you enjoyed the show. If you have a question or want to bring up a certain topic that you'd like me to discuss, leave it in the comments or send us an email. We're more than happy to look at your suggestions, and that's how a lot of the videos I create are inspired. And with that, I'll say see you later. Cheers.
So, how can you learn more about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium sized businesses? Easy. Go over to my blog site, davidcbarnett.com, where you can learn more about me and how I work with my clients. You can learn more about my books and courses that I've prepared for you. You can find out how to subscribe to my email list, the YouTube playlists, and more. There's literally hundreds of hours of content there, all for free, and I'd love for you to be my guest. Special thanks go to Mark Willis at Lake Growth Financial, today's video sponsor. Mark helps people better manage their personal and business finances through the Bank on Yourself insurance strategy. This is something I've done personally and I've seen others use it successfully for years. Go to newbankingsolution.com to find all the interviews I've done with Mark and learn more about the advantages of these programs. While there, sign up for a free consultation to learn what this solution might look like for you.